Is motherhood just a feeling that can come for anybody or anything? Or the real motherhood is actually what you feel for something that actually comes out of your own body?
The blood of the mother produces the milk of the mother, which means it's unique, right? So it's uniquely her own. That's what it is. So if she feeds her baby, that baby is hers. That's what it tells.
Boy and mother are forever bonded, and because a boy, even after birth, leaves some cells in the mother. So the mother always carries the boy's cells inside her.
That is fascinating.
What a motherhood really entices, the fundamental design of protection beyond everything that a human being can understand.
So, Ifat, Anubha, first of all, thank you so much and welcome to Discovery of an Author podcast. It is truly an honor to have people like you with the backgrounds that you guys come from to be on this podcast. So, totally my honor. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Anubha and Ifat, we will be discussing the M Factor, the book that you guys have. I mean, it's a collection of very personal stories that have been written by many authors. But today, taking this book as a reference, we would be talking about the ecosystem of motherhood. And obviously, everything that is written in the book is included in the ecosystem of motherhood. I think this is very important. Ifat and Anubha, before we start, it would be really great if you guys can introduce yourself, your backgrounds, your skill set, and what are you guys trying to do. Ifat, let's start with you.
Okay. I think, first of all, I want to be very grateful for this place of discussion and a platform. I think it's an absolute honor to be a part of Anubha's book, to be able to contribute the little that we can do in our own journeys. Because I feel that there are millions of mothers who have really written stories of their lives across the millennia, but very few mothers would get a voice to even speak about it. So I'm hoping that I represent those voices that were not heard and not seen sometimes. But I guess the work that has gotten me into in the last 17, 18 years started with my baby being born. I used to be in the IT industry before that. So I've spent about nearly 10 years in that. But somewhere I think deeply this work may have been in the making through the process of, pondering reflection and our own experiences with the women around us and the men as well, like you mentioned, Raghav. So everybody has that maternal instinct in them, whatever we call that, of nurturing. I think that's there. So it started with the journey of the pregnancy, which was challenging, which I essay of in my story as well. And then deep down, I think for me, the point of turn was when I realized that the body is registering different from what my mind was experiencing. And that's why the work that I've been doing in so many years is in the field of therapeutics, which is called biodynamic craniosacral therapy. It's a lens of looking at the human body and what it registers as the experiences of life. And how can we integrate that and allow deep healing to occur at all levels, whether it's psychological, spiritual, or physical. So it is in a way a body work. It's used with gentle touch or the presence in the relational field, right? So that's been the center of my work, which weaves into being a lactation consultant who's there supporting the mothers to restore their journeys of challenging breastfeeding, phases of their life, which is really, really important, I think, because that's again very primal. Just as conception is very primal, breastfeeding is also extremely primal and urgent, also, in a way, not just primal, but also urgent because it has to do with nutrition, it has to do with life, to continue and growth to continue. And that can be a very challenging phase for a mother, especially when she feels that her body needs to produce milk to be able to keep that baby alive. And if that's not happening, it's almost like the body is grieving. The body is grieving almost like the loss of the baby because I'm not able to nurture that baby. Right? So it goes really deep for me in that way. So birth trauma is the area that I like to focus on, and that's what my heart has been called to work on. And so both from the perspective of counseling, lactation work, as well as biodynamic craniosacral work, has been centered around trauma care and support around that. So in a gist, that's what I would say the work has been.
Beautiful.
My first passion was writing. I did English honors and then I started studying psychology. So I have done a double bachelor's and a double postgrad, and I've been studying since then. And now I'm doing my PhD. So I have just been studying my whole life. I think I'm trying to find something. I remember, and the journey has to start from my mother, right? Because it is about motherhood. So I remember talking to my mom. So my mom couldn't take her final exams. We belong to very traditional Marwadi family from the north. I mean, from all over India, actually, from Kolkata, then we shifted to Delhi. So she couldn't take her final examinations because she was married at a young age and she was already pregnant with me. I'm the first of four. I'm the eldest daughter of four children. So, and then she had to leave her studies. So I told her that the exams that you didn't take when you were pregnant with me, I'm going to take exams for the rest of my life. So I'm completely in resonance with you, Effort, when you talk about the womb experience, because I think it starts from there in my exploration of what my mother's experience was being in this traditional setup. And I was the eldest of the four, and no woman had stepped out to work in my family. They hadn't gone for higher education. They all had a set pattern, right? In traditional Marwari family, you get married, you become this age, and then you get married. So I broke all those traditions, and I think the book is again something, where we break traditions and bring the mothers' voices, which are unheard of. The thing with our society is that we idealize women, right? Like you spoke about the Devi. So we idealize women, we put women at a pedestal, and especially motherhood. Motherhood to bhai sab चीजों का वहां पर है, like mother means वहां. You cannot have depression, you cannot be not liking something, you have to be breastfeeding, you cannot be facing any issues with breastfeeding. Then there's something that means you're not good enough. Not just good enough mother, not a good enough human being if you have these human emotions as a mother, right? So I think the birth of the book is to bring real mother voices in the forefront, where we are allowed to have all these feelings: depression, miscarriage, feelings about grief, things that we all can feel, and yet be good enough mothers. Like in psychology, Winnicott, a very big name, talks about just being a good enough mother. You don't have to be the best, you don't have to be perfect, but good enough. Effat and I are in the same field, where we have BCST, biodynamic cranial sacral therapy, at my center. So we have all the therapies that are not being offered anywhere else: body based therapies, dance therapy, expressive arts therapy, mindfulness based psychotherapy at the center. And that's what kind of inspired me to even write this book. And if you see that the book, along with memoirs and personal stories, my brief to all the authors was that, can we also bring our professional insights and how that transformed us, so that the reader at the end feels connected to our story, but also has a takeaway and is learning something from the book. Because usually, या तो सिर्फ psychology की books तो कोई general, people are not going to pick up, presence and what to do with the children psychologically, emotionally. They just maximum read what to expect when you're expecting, right? Dr. Spock, some Western books that we all grew up on. Yeah, ekdam hi Indian traditional Garb Sanskar and all, which the Gen Z and the mothers are disconnected with, right? But bringing an amalgamation and a meeting point, like Buddha ji talks about middle path, right? Where you are really in real voices of Indian mothers, but with some professional insight, something that you can take back, something that you can learn, like if it's work, right? If people can contact her after reading her chapter, whoever's going through these problems, then our work is done here, right? Like if we can reach out to the masses and they can feel that, okay, I'm not alone, I'm not isolated. That's what the book That's where it was born from. That's what the whole idea was.
Oh, beautiful. And I think as a reader, I mean, if a guy could read it and feel emotional,
Yeah.
so that is level 2 that you have reached.
Yeah.
Your level 1, that means it is sorted.
Yeah.
That level 1 being the new mothers or aspiring mothers or mothers who are already, they have a similar story. Anubha and Ifat, we start with the first official question. इसके दो एस्पेक्ट है. एक तो मुझे बताइए what define, and both of you can have different perspectives. It's not important that there would be one common definition, because motherhood is a mix of objectivism and subjectivism. Objectivism, there are certain principles which are there, and it's subjective as well, depends on person to person. What is motherhood? And is motherhood just a set of traits that can come from any individual despite of the sex? कि मदरहुड की एक फीमेल से ही आती है क्या? तो मदरहुड है क्या? तो लेट्स फर्स्ट डिफाइन व्हाट इज मदरहुड.
Who would like to go? Anupa, do you want me
You both can start and give your own
Okay.
perspectives.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay. Okay, so I'll take that. So essentially, I think, like you said, Raghav, it's very beautifully you put that across, that it's a state of being, right? So it's not necessary that it's only going to be experienced as a woman, but the fact of the nurturing that comes along deeply in a human experience, whether it's a male or female, it can definitely be there. And fathers feel that. And how do I say that? Because we have enough data and scientific understanding today that shows us that during the pregnancy, while the hormonal changes are occurring with the woman, there's also paternal hormonal changes that occur. That's giving him the sense of grounding, a sense of wanting to protect his family that's growing after that. So that's a biological shift that's occurring for men. And that deeply then connects us to the understanding of motherhood being not only a state of being for the women, but it's a human state to be. Right? And also, in a way, if you ask me to define it, I don't think it's possible to define a state of being that way. But in a more succinct way, I think what we can do is we can say that it's a state of relational, psychological, and a spiritual ground of presence and attunement. That's what we offer. It's a space of witness. It's a space of witnessing a growth happening in front of you, literally like a soil, you know. So when a seed has to sprout through from the ground, what really informs the growth of that seed is the soil and the field, the relational field that's around it. The quality of the soil, the quality of what the nutrients it's going to hold, and how it's going to receive the other factors like sun and water and other manure and other things that it's going to absorb into that. That's why the farmers spend such a long time nurturing the soil before even they put the seed in. So that's not the first step. The first step is literally about the field and the relational field that we create around that, which is also the reason, in a way, that I wanted to kind of ponder over this and reflect upon the understanding why motherhood is often not seen or heard in the way that we think, and a modern way of looking at the worldview. The reason it's not seen is because the field is often never seen in every aspect. Neuroscience tells us, or neurobiology in that fact, that neurons are the most important, and our attention always went towards that, and we learned a lot about that. So scientists learned a lot about the neurons that are present in the brain. But the recent neurobiology starts to then talk about saying neurons aren't the most important, but the field that's around it, which is the glial fields, that cells that are around it, that's what is informing those neurons, and neurons are not the ones that are actually firing that information, which means the field always comes first and primal. And it's not meant to be seen. It's not meant to be the one that's louder than the rest of it, because the field is what informs that. That's true for everything in the world. That's how the universe is designed to be. The universe is the field in a way, right? And what we pick up is the planets, the stars. We look at them because they are all placed in a way, in an orderly way. But what we don't recognize is the field that is around it, which is larger and much vast than what those little things are kept around it. So I think it's meant to be that way, and I think we need to hold reverence to that. We need to hold reverence to that and not keep asking for too much of attention towards that, because it loses its purity and its spiritual state when we try to do that. And we are experiencing that, Raghav. We are experiencing that in our modern times. While we speak about the grandparents and grandmothers and, in our generations having a lot of children and perhaps never had the consent, there was also such beautiful ecosystems that were created around postpartum care traditionally, where enough rest was given to the mother, where everybody else pitched in. That means the entire woman folk and the village folk came together to support that period of recovery for that mother. And honestly, we don't have it today. We have depleted that ecosystem for the mother, and expecting the mothers, and I think it's also the women themselves are wanting to, raring to go and do whatever we need to do in this world and make our names there, while we have neglected our own bodies and our spirits in the process of that. And we have taken we're not going to be without having to face the consequences of that. And that's also informs my next project. With the previous project of the film was untying breastfeeding, but the next project is going to be about postpartum care, the depleting, eroding knowledge that we have, like Anubha mentioned, that we have this unseen knowledge that is there in our unconscious, that's present for all cultures around the world, has completely been eroded. And before those practices and the deep understanding and wisdom is lost, I feel called to essay it and keep that not just as a small documentary, but as a document series that captures every little thing, so that if we want to go back to it, which we will, because we will be called to go back, how far can we get? You see, we will come back. And when we come back, we should have the references for us so that we can recreate that ecosystem without losing the wisdom of it. We have lost the wisdom of birth because we have moved from natural birth, natural birth to vaginal birth to medicalized birth today. And so that means we have lost a lot of wisdom that's been present with the dye system that we used to have in India, especially in India, I'm saying, while we can essay it across the world, but definitely from India as well. And those have far-reaching effects and far-reaching impacts throughout lifetime, not just in the beginning of the life, which is where my work really concentrates on, but across lifetime. Yeah.
No, beautifully said. And there are a couple of things that we'll circle back, because very amazingly, beautifully you've described this ecosystem. Anubha, over to you. What's your perspective on this? What is your definition and take on it?
बहुत ही बड़ा
बिल्कुल
question
बिल्कुल,
है
प्लीज हाँ
motherhood,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
इसका इतना आसान नहीं है इसे कुछ डिस्क्राइब करना. आई थिंक पहले तो क्या होता है कि इंडिया में तो कैसे बस इट्स अंडरस्टूड, शादी हो गई तो बस फर्स्ट ईयर में लाइक यू आर एक्सपेक्टेड कि बच्चा तो पार्ट एंड पार्सल है, मतलब
बिल्कुल.
whether the parents are ready, why two people have come together in a marriage, सो मैंने तो, मुझे लगता है शुरू से मैं तो रिबेल थी. मैं तो बर्थ ऑर्डर अगर हम साइकोलॉजी के हिसाब से देखेंगे तो मैं तो बिल्कुल एज फर्स्ट बॉर्न आई एम अ रिबेल. तो मैंने तो हर चीज वैसे भी तोड़ कर ही करी है. तो आई हैड नो आइडिया दैट आई वांटेड अ चाइल्ड. आई वाज वेरी यंग व्हेन आई गॉट मैरिड, सो child and all was out of the question, because I was studying psychology. I was doing my double graduation and all of that stuff. वो भी सबके खिलाफ जाके मैं कर रही थी शादी के बाद. So I had a child after 7 years when I wanted to have. When I decided कि अब मुझे अब break लेना है from this, then I'm going to have a child. So उसके लिए I really like जैसे इफ़त ने इतने खूबसूरती से कहा कि उसका फील्ड प्रिपेयर करना जरूरी है. फील्ड इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. कोई समझता नहीं, एवरीबडी थिंक्स बस ठीक है, इट्स सो नेचुरल इन इंडिया. ऑलरेडी वी आर ओवर पॉपुलेटेड. कौन इतना सोच के उस तरह करता है। तो जिस तरह इफ़्फ़त ने फील्ड को डिस्क्राइब किया, बिकॉज़ ऑफ द होल बैकग्राउंड ऑफ साइकोलॉजी, मैंने 1 साल पूरा प्रिपेयर किया। आई प्रिपेयर्ड माय बॉडी टू अलाउ द बर्थिंग प्रोसेस टू हैपन। सो पूरे साल जब मैंने डिसाइड फाइनली किया, आई did a lot of things to prepare my body, meaning, doing the right test to see that is my body ready for birthing, are my nutrients right, taking the right nutrition. Prayer, spirituality is a very important part of my life. So praying to God, and Krishna is my favorite, one of my favorites. You can see Krishna is everywhere around me. And I had really prayed to Krishna, and मेरे book के chapter में भी beginning में है.
Yeah.
And it just miraculously happened that my son was born around Krishna's birth, right after a year of Janmashtami. So
August.
I really felt कि August में. So I really felt कि वहां से connection शुरू हुआ, because they say that before you even before the seed is even there in your womb, the message goes to the universe, right? जैसे इफ़त ने इतनी खूबसूरती से बताया, तो वो हम फील्ड मैंने प्रिपेयर करना शुरू किया, बॉडी को प्रिपेयर करना शुरू किया. देन आई डिसाइडेड, तो वो सारी चीजें हमने करनी शुरू करी. एक तो है कि आप मदरहुड को उस तरह से फ्रॉम दैट सेक्रेड स्पेस, एक रेवरेंस के तरह मैंने ये पूरा मदरहुड जर्नी लिया, एंड मे बी दैट हेल्प मी थ्रू द मदरहुड जर्नी. मुझे बहुत दुख होता है आज जब मैं देखती हूँ कि सब इतना स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं. जस्ट टू बिकम अ मदर ऑल्सो हैज बिकम सच ए चैलेंज. IVF है, ये है, वो है, नॉर्मली हम नहीं कर पा रहे. समथिंग दैट इज नॉर्मल, natural to us, to a woman's body, people are not able to have children normally. तो डेफिनेटली जैसे इफ़त ने बोला, कुछ हो रहा है, फील्ड में कुछ हो रहा है जो सही नहीं हो रहा है, राइट? सो आई थिंक ऑल ऑफ दैट प्रेपरेशन हेल्प मी टू हैव अ स्मूथ pregnancy and delivery, natural delivery. And obviously I was already, dancing, yoga, सारी चीजें, spiritual prenatal classes which I took my husband to. So उसमें father का काफी रोल है. हर पड़ाव या हर स्टेप पे मैंने उनको इन्वॉल्व रखा, मेरे हस्बैंड को. लमास क्लासेस फ्रॉम दिल्ली, स्पिरिचुअल क्लासेस फ्रॉम पुणे. आई डिड अ लॉट ऑफ द रिसर्च, नेचुरल बर्थिंग. आई चोज अ डॉक्टर हु इनकरेजेस नेचुरल बर्थिंग. तो मैंने सब वो प्रेपरेशन करी, राइट? आई वाज रेडी. बट आई डोंट नो कि हम मदरहुड को इतना सीक्रेट और इतनी रेवरेंस देते हैं क्या? हर फैमिली में इतना सपोर्ट मिलता है क्या, वेर यू कैन रियली प्रिपेयर for giving birth to a child, right? Because you're inviting a soul into your body and bringing them into this world. तो for me, motherhood was very sacred. And of course, वो जो archetypes हैं हमारे, already कुछ archetypes activate हो जाते हैं. जो हम जैसे हम motherhood के बारे में सोचते हैं, कुछ archetypes alive हो जाते हैं. Archetypes हमने mythology से लिए, right? यशोदा, देवकी, कुंती, कौशल्या. These are our archetypes, right? हम यही देखकर पढ़ के बड़े हुए हैं. एंड देन आवर ओन मदर, शी बिकम्स द पर्सन दैट वी या तो वी वांट टू बी लाइक अ मदर, और वी डोंट वांट टू बी लाइक अ मदर.
Yeah, it's extreme.
यही
बिल्कुल.
दो स्टैंड है. या तो आपकी चाइल्डहुड बहुत ही अच्छी हो, तो यू जस्ट आप आपकी मदर को वहां पेडेस्टल पे रखते हैं, या यू जस्ट टोटली वांट टू बी ऑपोजिट of your mother. So ये archetypes play out होना शुरू हो जाते हैं. So motherhood is very difficult to define. I can just talk about the people I met, and the reason these 9 mothers, beautiful mothers, are part of this book is क्योंकि जब मैं इन सबसे मिली तो इनकी स्टोरी ने मुझे टच किया. तो हर स्टोरी, मैं कहती हूँ, हर मदर एक हीरोइन है. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि सारी स्टोरीज इट्स लाइक अ हीरोइन जर्नी. जैसे हीरोज जर्नी होता है इन लिटरेचर, जोसेफ कैम्पबेल एंड ऑल का, मुझे ऐसा लगता है हर मदर की स्टोरी एक हीरोइन की जर्नी है, जहाँ कुछ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आया, फिर दे ओवरकेम दैट विद देयर पावर, रेजिलियंस, करेज, एंड मदरहुड ने उन्हें कुछ सिखाया. समथिंग हैपेंड, समथिंग शिफ्टेड, कुछ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशनल हुआ हर स्टोरी में.
So basically, what I'm understanding is that the primary factor over here is that it is very important when we are talking about the ecosystem of motherhood to have a support system.
Yes.
So motherhood is not something which was born out of isolation.
No.
Motherhood is something which encompasses a lot of variables. So it is so let's take an example. 2 families, one is a nuclear family, one is a joint family. एक family में सिर्फ husband wife और एक बच्चा होने वाला है. They are based out of Bangalore, and there is a family, let's say based out of Jaipur. It's a traditional family. They have joint family. Parents भी रहते हैं, भाई भी रहते हैं, उनके बच्चे भी रहते हैं. अगर उन 2 फैमिलीज में एट द सेम टाइम बच्चा जन्म लेता है, एक जो न्यूक्लियर फैमिली को बिलोंग करते हैं ऑन बैंगलोर और एक जो जॉइंट फैमिली को बिलोंग करते हैं, what do you think would be the difference in the mindset of the new mothers from both these families? एक जो सिर्फ अपने हस्बैंड के साथ रहती है, जिनका एक बच्चा हुआ है, वो जो नई मदर बनी है, और एक who lives in a joint family with a caring husband. I mean, caring in both the cases, but they have ecosystem, they have people, there are already children over there. Do you think there's going to be a difference in the psychology and the mental makeup of that newly born mother, if I could say, because she's born as a mother now, the newly born mother? क्या डिफरेंस होगा कि उसकी उनकी मेंटालिटी में, उनके साइकोलॉजी में, उनकी परवरिश में, उनके थॉट प्रोसेस में, उनके एफर्ट में, इन दो फैमिलीज में?
Quite a vast spectrum, I would say. Yes. So, like I said, like we began with the understanding of the field, right? So, if you go deeper down in the kind of architecture of those families are, whether we are looking at joint families or unit families, and they are going to be across different cultures, anyways, differently. And we are moving towards more nuclear families in the future, even more. I would nuclear to the point of single parenting, almost to that point. So we have the spectrum of it. So the way the shaping of the psychology of those children changes completely from where we come from. And I have noticed this myself as my personal experience, I would say. We are from a very small family. We moved to Bombay, so obviously it's just me, my husband, and my baby. She would be looking for contact with me constantly. When I say constant, I mean 24 hours, literally. And at one point, the first experience I had, which was really an eye-opening for me, is when I went to my native, which was in Bangalore. And there were a lot of other people in the family, and the other children are there. I would see her for the first time move away from me and never want to look for me because she was busy with others. And for me, it was almost like, is this even possible? Because your body feels touched out at some point, you see, because you're constantly being the caregiver for this baby. And then you realize that as a lived experience of my life, it came as a huge truth for me to necessarily understand that growing up cannot happen without an ecosystem of a village around you. It is simply not possible. So we will have to recreate that village in some form or the other. And we are connected beings. For human beings, the connection comes first. First comes safety, and then comes connection. These two are primal, and you really can't remove one from the other. You just require it. And as a community, both are provided. Safety as well as connection is provided. And without connection, the neocortex, basically the prefrontal cortex that actually develops into thinking and advancing brain, cannot be developed fully without the sense of safety and connection. And this is again reiterated with the neurobiology and neuroscience that tells us that the hindbrain that we have, which is basically the brain stem, right? And then on top of it is the limbic brain and then the prefrontal cortex. So those are three different parts of the brain. Of course, it works as a unit, but these are different parts of the brain. And so what is required from the beginning is because even as an adult, for example, you can't function until you have felt the sense of safety in any environment. So safety comes first for us. And so you can't reason to a human being when they are not feeling safe. So you can't reason to little children, for example. If they have a meltdown, they are having a meltdown. You really can't sit and say, you can't be feeling this way. It's not going to happen. So that gets registered for that matter. So I think as a unit of families, the larger the families are, they become the co-regulators for that developing child, the co-regulators of nervous system, that someone is always available to co-regulate you. And so they are far more, the emotional resilience of those children is markedly different from children who are born alone and in single unit families. And that plays a huge role later on, especially youngsters and teenagers today. You're seeing a very high rise in suicides. We're talking about intelligent children, well-informed children, children who are connected through the world, using the internet. We think that that connection is sufficient for us, but it's really not. We're looking for a human connection. And that human connection is depleting in this fast-growing advancement that we are leading ourselves into. While we can still go ahead, the fact is that I think we feel like we are confused between should we advance or should we go primal. There's always this debate of should we go natural, leave everything and then go backwards, or do we just keep going advanced? I think it's neither of this, like Anubha mentioned about the middle path, right? About how can we still remain grounded while we create our technologies that we have. But the problem is when we leave that connection and the field and then try to advance, we have lost the ground. And so it is very different, Raghav. The children who are born having that support network around them have a different biology, brain biology, from the children who are born in setups that are far more isolated. Very, very clearly, you can see the difference about it. And the emotional resilience is very different because in a co-regulating space, what we do is we learn to reconnect with ourselves and our needs, and also allow the space for someone else to exist around us. That will happen even if you have siblings, for example. And children that don't have the siblings obviously have a different experience. And children who have siblings, they have their own little ecosystem that really, primes that understanding for them. So this codependency that we have with each other, with siblings and other people in our families, really defines our human potential as people. So I feel it's very important. But it doesn't have to be either or. What I think is important is, can we recreate that connections in a different way for children who don't have the capacity or don't have that space where they can grow in families that are large? Because you can't really go back to those kind of connections anymore. You really can't expect that. That's not practical, because people are moving for opportunities, economic opportunities, or educational opportunities to different parts of the world. They are going to keep moving. And the field is culture, right? So the field is always going to be a changing field. More so now than it was 50 years ago, for example. Far fewer people left the country. Now it's not the same. So it's more fluidic, and the fabric of culture will change. So the culture was the grounding factor for, especially for people in India, but not anymore. It's going to keep moving. But what is it that doesn't move? What is it that's going to anchor? Is basically the attunement and the presence that the child can carry. I think that really hits very close when we deal with this subject in the program called Living the Truth program that rolled out about 3.5 years ago. And this is primarily to do with anybody can join the group and learn the process of understanding about the lens of life. But essentially, a lot of women are drawn towards this program, especially as mothers, because they are primed to understand, how can I recreate this ecosystem without even intellectualizing it? They just have it inside them. They want the right soil. They want to ensure that I don't pass on what has happened in my life or the trauma that I carry in my life. I want to recreate this pure space for my child to grow. Every mother does that in their own capacity, in their own limited understanding. Everyone does that, including fathers. They do that. So this program really centers around understanding the ultimate truth, Raghav. So if you understand the ultimate truth, that's an unchanging anchor for anyone to move across different fields, no matter whether we are born in families that have that support system or being nuclear families. That anchoring will then support them to stay aligned and to be able to actually navigate through life.
No, that's
psychological.
beautifully said. Yeah, yeah. That's even what I used to think about this thing. Anubha, what's your take on the same thing?
So, as Ifat said, right? Ifat has already said the most important things. I was born in a big joint family in Kolkata, but we were shifted, like Ifat spoke, right? For opportunities, my father settled in Delhi with my family, and we were just siblings. We were just four of us trying to bring each other up because we were isolated. We were alone in Delhi, just us as a unit. So that really changed my experience. My childhood was shaped very differently. While my husband comes from a large, huge joint family from Udaipur. So they have a completely different structure here. So many cousins, family, everybody growing up together. So we had very, very different experiences, right? And when my son was born, I was again like if it just me, my husband, and my son, right? I was alone in Pune in this setup. So definitely the architecture of the family system has has shifted in India, and it is a very different experience. Like how my husband's cousins are growing and how we grew up is different. How my son is growing versus people in his traditional setup are growing is very different. Like if it spoke about, right? But I think what is important is the presence, is a presence and attunement, like if it mentioned, because what is important is that even if the parents are in a nuclear family and it's just two of us, or if it's just the mother and child sometimes, or the father and the child sometimes, are you able to be fully present for your child? Like Dan Siegel speaks about, I've mentioned him in my chapter also, he speaks about the four important things for secure attachment, which is needed for a child's resilience and emotional growth. Is the child feeling seen? Is the child feeling heard? Is the child feeling soothed? And these things, and safe, safety is the most important thing, right? So, safe, seen, soothed, and then the child develops a secure attachment. So, it doesn't matter whether you have a village around you or not. Even if one person is able to offer that presence to that child, it could be anyone. It doesn't have to be the mother, the father, mother, grandparents, anyone who's looking after the child and is completely in attunement. And this, this thing called rhythm synchronicity between the caregiver and the child, where the caregiver is able to understand and hold the child fully in the field. The child has to feel held, not just in terms of the physical sense, yes, that too, but is fully present for the child. The child will still have a secure attachment. What helps is to have lots of people so the child is never feeling alone and never feeling unheard. But if that's not possible because of the given nature of things of the society right now, that we are all in nuclear families, is there one person providing that attunement and the presence for the child's healthy, healthy development? And secure attachment is the most important thing for the child to have a healthy life ahead. So if that is provided, then I suppose that we can overcome the nuclear family and the whole setup that we are facing. The other thing that's replacing Having said that, the other thing that's replacing the joint family system is living in societies. I think that helped me a lot. Even though I was alone here with my husband and child, I live in a huge society with lots of children, other mothers. So that became our community. So the child still felt a part of the community every evening when the child would interact with so many other children, or go to a mother toddler class, or go to these spiritual classes that we used to go to. So that replaces the village, the community, the joint family system in modern societies. So, one, if they can find such a community where the child still feels held, the child still interacts with other people, still gets to be loved and nurtured and nourished by so many more people, right? Even if you don't have family, that can replace what was the joint family system. So, I think that really helped me bring up my child in a community and still a part of the community. We still a very, very strong part of the community that we are bringing in Pune.
Do you guys feel that 10 years, 20 years down the line, when nuclear families, the concept of nuclear families becomes a norm, or 50 years down the line and it gets accepted, anything becomes a norm when it gets accepted because of the situation, not primarily because voluntarily it got accepted, but because of the situation and the way civilization is evolving. If nuclear families becomes a norm and you see like out of 10 families 8 families being nuclear families, do you believe this is a great loss for a child, and also a very different kind of definition of motherhood will get evolved out of this thing?
So I feel like I think what is important for us to be cognitive and conscious about is the integrity of the way the universe works is inherently there. It's default. It's not something that we need to redesign or guide or even augment in a way. It's inherently there. The integrity is always going to be there, which means that if we as human beings are designed for safety and connection, we will recreate in some other form. We will recreate that in some other form. And it doesn't have to be the exact same architecture of how each society existed, but we will recreate that in some other form. And that's okay, because all that we require to understand is that, like you said, it's a process of realization of how do we make refine that system to come to a point that it is completely functional. So it'll be primal at some point that we have nuclear families just starting out in the last 20, 30 years. And then eventually we will learn how to function within that and also recreate that architecture of the society in such a way that it will also find its optimal functioning point. We will do that. And that will happen eventually. And that's the inherent integrity as well as the hope of humanity.
But in the book, you have also talked about the term epigenetics. And I do understand your environments and all the factors which are outside of your control. I mean, like, not outside of your control, but which are not a part of your biology. The external factors, they do affect a lot of things. So
Right.
this is where my problem was. Because if it becomes a norm in the future, I don't think because currently people are the way people are working. Okay, let's take an example of this thing called DINK. It's a question also over there which I wanted to ask. I think double income, no kids. It's something which is rampant.
Yeah.
It is a step beyond nuclear family. पहले आपका था joint family. पहले इतना हुआ, फिर इतना हुआ, अब it's going. It's completely going away. So I can see a clear evolution which is happening. And what is more strange and surprising and scary at the same time is the DINK as a phenomena is not something that is completely been governed by the man. It is a decision that is taken from both the parties. If motherhood is something which is innately natural within a female, then why are a lot of women in today's time deciding not to go through this thing and not to have children? I feel there is nothing biological about this thing. It is all epigenetic. It is all the societies which the way they have evolved. It is the consumerism. It is the materialism that has completely replaced the biological urge of a woman to give birth to a child. And if materialism and consumerism is so goddamn powerful that it could replace a natural urge from an individual, I am scared.
Right.
ये कितनी भावी बोल रहा हूँ, हावी हो गई आप सोचिए.
मैं बताती हूँ, मैं आपको एक जोक बताती हूँ. एक मीम चल रहा है, रिप्लेस नहीं हुआ है. इट्स नथिंग हैज बीन एबल टू रिप्लेस जो मटर्नल इंस्टिंक्ट है, एक फादर एंड मदर में, ह्यूमन बीइंग में इंस्टिंक्ट है, नेचुरल इंस्टिंक्ट है. तो जोक ये चल रहा है that the new pets are the plants.
हाँ.
The new children are the pets. And children are the exotic animals. तो बच्चों को रिप्लेस किससे कर दिया गया है? कोई प्लांट्स का ध्यान रख रहा है, कोई डॉग्स और कैट्स कर रहा है. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि the nurturing instinct has not gone because of materialism and consumerism. Because of the misinformation and because of the thing, like I know friends that who decided not to have children, right? One, they were really struggling to have children. जो मैंने आपको बात बताई कि IVF है और जो दूसरे प्रोसेसेस हैं, because naturally हम बर्थ नहीं दे पा रहे. So वो प्रोसेस इतना पेनफुल हो गया है, and they're all working. They feel that it's not worth taking that time off. ये मुझे अगर नेचुरली हो जाता तो ठीक है, नहीं तो मुझे करना ही नहीं है. And they feel मदर बनने से जो ट्रेडिशनल आइडिया है कि हमें अपनी डिग्निटी, आइडेंटिटी, इनकम, हमें सब कुछ गिव अप करना पड़ेगा और हम अपनी लाइफ को कभी जी नहीं पाएंगे. सो मैंने देखा है कि दीज आर द थिंग्स दैट आर स्टॉपिंग द न्यू एज इनकम, द डिंग कपल्स फ्रॉम हैविंग चिल्ड्रन. बट वो ही कपल्स मैंने देखा वो डॉग्स रखते हैं, प्लांट्स को रखते हैं, अडॉप्शन करते हैं, बाद में जाके दे थिंक ऑफ अडॉप्शन. सो आई डोंट थिंक एनीथिंग कैन रिप्लेस द नेचुरल इंस्टिंक्ट ऑफ मदरहुड.
Yeah, I know. I agree with Anubha and totally. That's why I said inherently integrity and how the whole universe works cannot change. That's not something that's in our hands, and it will always be so. Which means that we might move away from it, and we will have our own consequences of it, and we will be brought back to that circle to understand that this is not the way it will function, and it's happening. I will tell you example of that. Now, as a lactation consultants, we have different professional forums in which we discuss our cases and also discuss the things that are around that topics of lactation and women and pregnancy and childbirth and things like that, or the reproductive cycle of the women. So it was interesting a couple of years ago, there was this heated debate that was up there talking about how the women who are in the army in the United States, I'm talking about the American army, where they are deployed in different places in the world because they have the army bases in different places of the world, right? So that's a part of the geopolitical, policies that they have. So these women are deployed there, which means that they have fought their way to be shoulder to shoulder with men in every field across different economic strata. So women are also there in the army, right? In the battlefield. So that's a part of what has become the reality. Having said that, those young women who are also army officers and people who are in the army also become mothers. And when they become mothers, the heartache they go through when they are far away from their babies. We are talking about personal stories coming out of that. We're not talking about some distant experiences of people. We are talking about them talking about the primary sources where the mothers are talking about their heartache, their sense of grief, and their fight to ask the government and to ask the people of the society to just allow me to be the mother. I don't want to be here at this point. They pump their breast milk and they FedEx it across seas for their babies every single day. This is also a reality. While we can see the heroism of that, we can also see deep down how those women are struggling and what their psychological state has become when they crave to just be allowed to be a mother at that state. And they're now no more, because then the world construct, the social construct is such a way that it's going to be brutally honest about it. They're going to say, okay, you fought for this, you got this freedom, you got this autonomy, you wanted to be shoulder to shoulder with all the men, and so you will be called to the battlefield when it's required. You don't really have a choice. So then you serve it, then come here. So now when you're here, don't ask for you to be allowed to then go back and be with your babies. That's really not a fair deal. That's the social construct. So while we might keep moving ahead with our social construct and how we see our value systems change, or where we place our worth with, whether it's with economy or fashion, or like you said, consumerism, and all of this is going to keep happening. And that's what we call as worshipping the demigods in the concept of living the truth. So we are worshipping power, we are worshipping money, and we are worshipping all the worldly things that we have. But deep down, inherently, we are spirit. That's not going anywhere. You really can't remove that and then throw it away. So while we can submerge it and try to bury it, it is going to find its place. It's going to find its place. And now you can see the women who had moved away from homes and moved into the economic, construct that we have moved back. There are many women choosing to just be mothers now and wanting to look after their babies. You know why? Because it's not just about the heartache. It's also the allergies. It's also the illnesses and diseases the children are having. So you can't move away from that. It's going to bring it back, and it's going to mirror it back into our face and say, okay, this is what we get out of what we chose. So what we choose is a mental construct that has nothing to do with our spiritual lineage that we have internally. That's not going to change. It's just going to be the same. And so while we can bury it and deconstruct it and make a decision like the dink couples that you're talking about, they might do that, but that will never take over the humanity. It's not possible. It will always be an exception, maybe a larger exception, but it will never come back to being saying, okay, 80% of the world is going to decide to be that. And you can see this even in the LGBT community, for example. Even if it's an LGBT community, you still see the need for them to have commitment and marriages. Whether that becomes successful or not is a different matter. That's a debate that we can have separately. But the point is they want to have a unit of family and they want to have children. So they adopt or they do biological changes or do surgeries, but they will want that child. So we are primed as human beings to have that unit of family for sense of safety and connection. You really can't move far away from that.
I always used to feel, क्योंकि हम ये motherhood की feelings की बात कर रहे थे. You can have the same feelings of motherhood for a plant, for a baby, for a plant and for an animal.
Yeah.
But there are two things. I feel that the feeling that you will have for an entity that came out of your own body would be a higher. So A, why are you depriving yourself of that feeling? That is one. And B, I always used to think that evolution is linked with motherhood.
Of course.
Because see, nature is very clear. She is ruthless for a reason. She's like, I only give a damn about the evolution of the species. If the motherhood and the hormones and the structure of motherhood is not in a way that you do not get feelings for the child that is coming out of your body, how would you nurture it? And if you are not able to nurture it, my purpose of evolution will get defeated. So then, is motherhood just a feeling that can come for anybody or anything, or the real motherhood is actually what you feel for something that actually comes out of your own body?
So I'm definitely going to take that, Raghav. So, I'm quite intrigued by the way you think about certain things and how you're pondering upon these really big questions, but very fundamental questions, right? So if it is a feeling, then it's a transient feeling, because feelings are always transient. They can never be steady. But what we are talking about is not just a feeling of nurturing that anybody gets for any human being for that matter. Someone who's not having food, we feel the sense of nurturing and we give them something. And then we walk past and move on. But what a motherhood really entices is the fundamental design of protection beyond everything that a human being can understand. You would see this even in animals, for example. Like if you see a bird which is sitting on its eggs, warming it while the egg hatches, you go even close to any parameters around that bird, you will see a violent mother bird who will try to protect its egg. And a pigeon in the garden, when it lays its egg, and which I've seen several times in my own balcony, even by mistake, if you have touched the egg or you have come close to it and you have displaced it or whatever, the pigeon simply abandons the egg. Because it's no more the way she wanted to kind of take it, right? So essentially, motherhood, which is basically baby born out of themselves, which is why the desire is so strong that you have a whole industry around it, which is IVF industry and all of that industries that are around it, right? So the need to have your own is very, very primal for human beings. We might be okay to take a decision and a choice to have something else. That's okay. But the fact that it's not similar is deeply rooted in our primal understanding and unconscious, and which is so beautifully given as a concept and also a guidance in the Quran, which really informs my life in a way, that we have a concept called the milk siblingship, which is not present, or you will not see that in any other culture. I don't know if you're aware of it or not.
What is that? Milk sibling?
Milk siblingship. So the blood of the mother produces the milk of the mother. That's the raw material for that. So milk of the mother, which is breast milk, is produced out of the blood of that mother, which means it's unique, right? So it's uniquely her own. That's what it is. So if she feeds her baby, that baby is hers. That's what it tells. So if I take another baby, which also happens in the cultures, and that baby is either dying or not able to get its own mother's milk, or the mother is dead, these things can happen in social scenarios, right? So if I take that baby and feed my milk to that baby becomes mine. I want you to understand the gravity of that deep understanding, which means my own baby and that baby becomes a milk sibling, which means they cannot marry. They become real blood siblings. That's the importance of what you're talking about. And this is something that's practiced everywhere in all Islamic countries, including our own country, in the sense. So, you need to inform them that this baby has had milk from me. So therefore, my children and that child
Are
are
related.
not going to be in any circumstances that they might end up marrying each other. So milk siblingship is a very important understanding of it. What does that then tell us? It then tells us that what comes out of our body cannot be replaced with anything else. You can
So-
make choices, which is important, that we care for, the orphans and other children. We absolutely need to do that. But that's fostering, which is why in Islam, again, you don't have a concept of traditional adoption. What we have is called fostering. You don't change the truth. You still maintain the truth and then give the care, which is fostering, right? So you don't change that relationship by saying, okay, I have given you my surname, so therefore you're my baby. And people feel betrayed with that understanding. Let me tell you that. People feel betrayed when they become adults that, I didn't know that I was adopted. Or they keep looking for that primal connection. You've seen that movie. There was a movie that, beautifully portrayed the whole story of how this little boy maybe in Australia or something, he tries to go to Google Maps and tries to find the mother way back into India.
Tiger or lion, something. Dev Patel.
Yeah, Dev Patel's movie. Such a beautiful,
Brilliant.
movie.
Nicole Kidman. Yeah.
Yes, it's such a beautiful movie. So that means as a human being, I have had clients who are adopted and they discovered that they were adopted later on. And they keep looking for that connection. They want to know who is my mother, not just the mother. I want to know who is my father. You know
And
why?
the why. And the why also.
And the why. Of course, the why will always be there. But I want to know. I want to trace back my origin, because we, as human beings, what do we value the most is identity. We value identity and we want to know who we are. And that protection can only happen with families, right? So if I'm going to be in a so-called relationship which is not a marriage, for example, then what happens to the rights of the children that will be born out of such a relationship is something that people don't think about.
They do not.
They don't
Absolutely.
think about it, right? So then this is what is happening here. So that means identity is important for us as human beings, and our communication actually is a way of expressing our identity to each other. That's what we are doing in conversations. And in today's world, it is even more importantly seen clearly, because look at the culture of podcasts that we have, just as what we are doing today. What are we doing? We want to share our ideas with each other across the world. And that's because of our identity that we carry behind.
Yeah.
That's important for us. No, Raghav? So it is very, very primal. It's very primal. And this is so beautifully seen in the cultures around the world, where women come together, they feed each other's children, and they become their own children. And they look after them like their own children. And so it moves through in that way. So that important relationship can't be replaced with anything else.
Absolutely.
It can't do that.
Absolutely.
I recently came across this study, if it to add to what you're so beautifully talking about, that a boy and mother are forever bonded. I mean, we make all these mommy jokes, right? This is mama's boy. Now I understand, because a boy, even after birth, leaves some cells in the mother So the mother always carries the boy's cells inside her.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So
I was
other way around. You're
surprised,
saying it is
so
other way around.
other way around. So there's some of the boy cells. It happens only with boys, right? And we make all these common jokes on I don't want to get married to a mama's boy, but our mother is actually carrying her boy child cells inside them. Like it's amazing, you know. And I just wanted to add and read something from Gautami's chapter, whom I also met
Yeah,
through
please do
effort
that.
actually.
Yeah.
And she talks about, I also didn't know this when I was reading her chapter. She talks about, she says, surprisingly, the cold and the headaches began to reduce during my pregnancy and they vanished post delivery. I
Yes,
felt real hunger for the first time in my life
I
after
remember.
birthing. Little did I know about the scientific term feto-maternal microchimerism, if I'm pronouncing it right. But I realized my body had rejuvenated and revamped itself to provide the best growing environment for my child. My body and mind felt so light, and it made me realize the heaviness I had carried all through my life. So it's amazing what you're talking about, right? Biologically, we are primed. Ifat is talking about, the milk siblings, which I didn't know about. I knew the blood, that it comes from the blood. And then, there's another, I think I've mentioned in my chapter, I don't remember, we read so many psychology studies every day that, I think Carl Lawrence did this study on geese because he was studying attachment. That these geese, when they were born and separated from their mother, they started following the psychologist Carl Lawrence because they just get attached to the first thing they see, right? So they got attached to him because they thought that was, the mother. And then there are so many other fascinating stories of monkeys. I think I've mentioned that the monkey, we think that a child just wants the mother for the, the breastfeeding. But those monkeys were fed and they were done with the feeding, but they carried the smell of the mother, this one handkerchief or piece of cloth, but for comfort, they would keep sticking to that cloth, even if they were hungry and even if they were not getting milk, they would stick to that cloth for comfort. So nothing, and we're not trying to, immortalize the mother and child connection or make it heavenly. But there's nothing that can replace this thing that Ifat is talking about, which has come from your body, made from your blood, fed almost from your blood, right? And the child leaves their cells behind in the mother's body. Nothing, just nothing can replace that connection.
No, that is so beautiful. It is so fascinating that I am feeling bad for all the fathers out there. We have nothing. We have nothing to offer. That is so
Fathers have.
sad.
There are studies,
They
by
have
the
a
way,
very
there are studies
important
about
role to
fathers.
play. They have a very important role to play. I
Yeah.
think huge amount of non-focus, like, there's at least, like, we often talk about motherhood not being heard. I really feel the fatherhood is not more heard, actually.
Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. I wanted
Thank
to
you for saying
write
that.
my next project is the F factor.
Anuba, next question is specifically for you.
Yeah.
Okay, what is, because I found it in your chapter when you were also talking about the Tao of motherhood. I want to understand what do you mean by holistic parenting. Specifically, okay, I'll be more specific. I still feel that my mom is kind of like an helicopter mom. I was driving one day, I'm from Jaipur. I was driving one day and she called me. She's like, "Beta, बहुत गर्मी हो रही, पानी पी लेना." I'm like, wow. I'm 36, as if I had no bloody idea that it is so hot. मुझे प्यास लगेगी, मैं पीऊंगा पानी. मुझे जब खाना खाना होगा, मैं खाऊंगा खाना. So मुझे लगता है कि कभी-कभी these things irritate me a lot. And I'm like, आप अगर रेत को जितना पकड़ने की कोशिश करोगे, वो उतना बिखरेगा. But somehow, somewhere, she has grown up in an era and an environment wherein if she's not very vocal and very publicly caring about her children, somehow there is like ये अच्छी माँ नहीं है. गलती उनकी नहीं है, परवरिश ऐसी रही है. Ecosystem ऐसा आया है. Again, I emphasize, I do come from UP. That belt is, I mean, the societal pressure is unreal in UP, Haryana, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, this Uttarakhand, Himachal belt. It's a very patriarchal society. The roles were very clearly segregated. The man is going to put the food on the table. The women are responsible for the welfare of the children, for everything. तो हेलीकॉप्टर पेरेंटिंग और हेलीकॉप्टर मदरहुड के बारे में भी मैं बहुत सुनता हूं. तो व्हाट इज देन आई वांट फ्रॉम, बिकॉज in your chapter you have mentioned that you were so involved and engaged in your son's life कि अच्छा इसको अगर कुकिंग करनी है तो चलो मैं इसको कुकिंग क्लासेस भी मैं लेके जाऊंगी, सब कुछ मैं करूंगी. If in today's time someone has become a new mother, what are the 5 or 6 advices or tips that you would give to her to raise her child in a very balanced and holistic way?
पहले तो ये एडवाइस वर्ड से हम थोड़ा सा दूर दूर जाएंगे, सॉरी.
हाँ,
I think
suggestions बोल दीजिए और any theoretical inputs that you could
sure.
provide.
I can share my experience. I can't give advice. पहले तो जो आपकी मॉम ने आपके साथ किया वो मैं भी करती हूँ. I make sure he has this bottle with him to finish 1 liter a day. He has to finish. और मैंने भी उसको literally कभी कभी कॉल करके बोला, because I'm in office the whole day. You know that you make sure, are you eating, are you drinking? You know, I just keep. So मैंने mention भी किया openly कि मैं बहुत helicopter parent थी. I was completely obsessed with my son. बहुत ही उसने बहुत ज्यादा cells छोड़े होंगे मेरे body में. I was completely attached, completely obsessed, and also it could, now on reflection in my own, it could also be because I was the eldest of the 4, right? And वो हम सारा प्यार, and we were in a nuclear family, right? If it, like we spoke about, there wasn't a village raising us. My parents were very busy. My father was busy putting food in our plate. We are 4, and my mother was busy doing housework. So मुझे उस तरह का केयर, अटेंशन और वो कंटिन्यूअस मुझ पे नहीं था. So मैंने बहुत पहले डिसाइड किया था that I'm going to have only one child and I'm going to give all my love, everything to that child. So it came from my psychology and my own birthing कि मैं उसको इतना प्यार दूंगी कि उसको किसी की कमी महसूस नहीं हो. न्यूक्लियर फैमिली, किसी और की जरूरत ही ना हो. So it started from there. Of course, then the whole path of Buddhism, Gita, जो हमने लोटस की बात करी, जो मैं उस समय कहना चाहती थी दैट थिक नाथ हंट जी की बहुत प्यारी बुक है, नो मड नो लोटस, बिकॉज विदाउट सफरिंग देयर इज नो लोटस. एंड गीता में भी बार बार ये एनालॉजी आती है स्पिरिचुअल प्रेगनेंसी एंड पेरेंटिंग में, दैट बी लाइक अ लोटस इन द वर्ल्ड, जहां आप मक इज देयर बट यू आर अनटच्ड, बिकॉज लोटस के लीव्स पे पानी रहता नहीं है. सो बी लाइक दैट इन द संसार में आप वैसे रहें कि आपको कुछ छू ना पाए. डिटैचमेंट, येट यू आर देयर इन द वर्ल्ड. तो वो लेसन मेरे लिए सबसे बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट लेसन था इन माय जर्नी ऑफ बुद्धिज्म एंड माइंडफुलनेस. इतने अटैचमेंट से डिटैचमेंट. सो देयर हैज टू बी दिस राइट मिक्स. गीता बुद्धिज्म में यही कहते हैं, अटैचमेंट. इस पे हमने बहुत, हमारे यहाँ गीता क्लास होती है, हम बहुत बात करते हैं कि बट अटैचमेंट बहुत जरूरी है बच्चे के लिए, बट कितना अटैचमेंट. अगेन द मिडिल पार्ट, आई कीप कमिंग बैक टू द बुद्धिज्म मिडिल पार्ट. अटैचमेंट जितने साल बच्चे को जरूरत है. Why do we breastfeed for 2 years, right? Ifat is, the expert. But 2 साल क्यों कहते हैं? Because बच्चे को उतनी जरूरत है. 5 साल तो नहीं कह रहे. 1 साल. अभी क्या हो रहा है? New mothers just wean off the child in 1 month, 2 months, because they want to get back. They have their own thing, right? Like Ifat mentioned, उनको काम पे वापस जाना पड़ता है. 3 month की maternity leave होती है. Because society ने हमारे motherhood के aspects को consider नहीं किया कि 2 साल तो breastfeeding करनी चाहिए for immunity of the child, but उन्होंने maternity leave उतनी ही दी है. So society is still to adapt to the, to the needs of the mother and the child. We are just forced to become men in the world. We have to supposed to get back to work, get our figure in shape. All the poor heroines, they are, shamed so much for not being able to come back into their figure, and they're supposed to get back to work. I think अभी दीपिका पादुकोण का कुछ बहुत बड़ा इंटरनेट पे चल रहा था कि she said, I want healthy work-life balance, and people were actually refusing. The director was refusing to give her a system where she could have a healthy life balance, where she could take care of the child. So society is still not taking care of our needs, right? हमें खुद की अपनी ecosystem create करनी पड़ती है. So to come back to the healthy attachment and detachment at the right time. So जब तक बच्चे को आपकी जरूरत है, आपको उतना उसके लिए present रहना है. Then you have to have some kind of stepping back, detachment, being like that lotus in the world, where you know that this child is, then it becomes your duty and your thing as a motherhood, but not to be so attached and merged with your child कि 36 years की उम्र में आके मदर अभी भी पानी चेक कर रही है, right? That is crossing.
Yes.
I don't know how I'll be at 36. But वो वहां आता है जहां तक होलिस्टिक मॉडल का सवाल है. वो मैंने लिखा था when I was, looking at emotional parenting, that हम सिर्फ IQ पे emphasis देते हैं as a society, right? Academics, IQ is emotion, not emotional intelligence. It's the IQ of the child in school, maths, English, right? How much is the child scoring? So the whole emphasis on the schooling education system, जिसमें मैं शुरू भी नहीं होना चाहती हूँ, is on IQ. But what is really important is EQ, emotional quotient, and SQ, spiritual quotient. So अगर हम एक चाइल्ड की डेवलपमेंट में IQ, EQ एंड SQ ये तीन पहलू एक ट्राइंगल जैसे हम एम्फोसिस दें तो हम चाइल्ड का एक होलिस्टिक डेवलपमेंट देख रहे हैं रादर देन जस्ट द एम्फोसिस ऑन इतने मार्क्स आने चाहिए. पर बच्चे को बड़े होकर इंजीनियर्स राइट अभी वी हियर ऑल दिस थ्री इडियट्स एंड कितनी अच्छी मूवीज बनाई हैं. आप पढ़ाई में इतने अच्छे हो लेकिन आपको रिलेशनशिप डील नहीं करना आता, आपको लाइफ से जीना नहीं आता. हाईएस्ट सुसाइड रेट्स इन engineering colleges because of no development of EQ and SQ, and also developing SQ, spiritual quotient from childhood, compassion, human values, wisdom. The lotus represents the two doves in Buddhism, right? Compassion and wisdom. So बच्चों को spiritual values, because in Buddhism we talk about that. There's a very beautiful study by Dr. Richard Davidson which talks about there were these infants, 6 months old infants who were shown puppets. So kuch puppets they were being mean to each other, and one puppet story they were being kind to each other. So they noticed more than 90% of the infants were drawn to kind puppets. So that means these values are innate in us. We are born good. We are meant, like the golden Buddha story, it is inside us. Buddhism, the qualities, kindness, compassion, we are born with these qualities. Only thing is that we forget these qualities when we come out in the world. Parents don't encourage these qualities. Who teaches their children gratitude, kindness, compassion from childhood, right? So spiritual quotient is the most important to be developed rather than IQ, EQ. I would say start with SQ. So that is the holistic model that I've been speaking about in the.
So I have a slight, a counter, not a counter per se.
Sure.
Do you think that, I mean, for children who are growing up 4 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, more than the spiritual quotient, because you mentioned about the emotional quotient, the spiritual quotient, and what was the third thing? Anubhav?
Intelligence, IQ, intelligence quotient.
Why do not we have a place for physical fitness? I mean, I'm just very curious because, I always feel, जैसे मैं जब कभी कभी अपने बेटे के प्री प्राइमरी स्कूल में जाता था, सो टीचर्स लाइक कि इंटेलिजेंट है ठीक है बट ये बैठता नहीं है, ही इज ऑलवेज प्लेइंग, एंड आई एम लाइक isn't that the biology, isn't the nature? आप वो अपने नेचर के अगेंस्ट ही नहीं जा रहा है. If you look at the body, if you look at the biology, the way my mind works, I don't want him to get into religion because हम लोग नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, हम लोग ग्रैपल नहीं कर पा रहे हैं फिलोसफीज को लेके, हम लोग में लड़ाइयां हो रही हैं फिलोसफीज को लेके. वो 5 साल के बच्चे को मैं ये सिखाऊं कि गो टू एन ऑल्टर एंड हाथ जोड़ के आओ, rather should I not let him just play, get exhausted, eat the best food of his life, maybe read something and enjoy? तो बस मैं ये जानना चाहता हूं कि why, क्योंकि यूरोपियन कंट्रीज में ना अनुभव ये फिजिकल वाला जो वर्टिकल है ना, that is primary. उनके कल्चर में और सब कुछ में. तो ये मैं जानना चाहता हूं कि where does this vertical, is this not important?
No, see, वो तो हो गई आपके चाइल्ड की, जैसे आप बात करें न्यूट्रिशन, स्पोर्ट्स, इंटरेस्ट, वो एक अलग एक डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द बॉडी एंड द ग्रोथ हो गई. जब मैं एसक्यू कहती हूँ दैट्स नॉट रिलीजन. एसक्यू इज एग्जैक्टली स्पिरिचुअल क्वेश्चन. सी, स्पिरिचुअलिटी इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम रिलीजन.
आई नो, या देयर इज अ डिफरेंस.
वेरी क्लियर, राइट? तो हम रिलीजन की बिल्कुल बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम बात करें यूनिवर्सल वैल्यूज की, काइंडनेस, कंपैशन, ये वैल्यूज विच आर कॉमन टू ऑल रिलीजन. तो हम रिलीजन की बिल्कुल बात नहीं कर रहे. आप समझेंगे स्पिरिचुअल क्वेश्चन बिल्कुल अलग. इट मींस हाउ टू बी काइंड, हाउ टू हैव गुड रिलेशनशिप्स, हाउ टू बिल्ड कनेक्शन, हाउ टू शेयर, दीज स्मॉल थिंग्स. जो आप बात कर रहे हैं फिजिकल क्वेश्चन, वो तो हमारे स्कूल्स और ये सब में कंपल्सरी है. दैट इज द ग्रोथ ऑफ द बॉडी, राइट? वो तो बच्चों को अच्छा खाना, अच्छी पढ़ाई, अच्छा, वो तो हमारे जैसे मैस्लो की हायरार्की में फूड, शेल्टर, सिक्योरिटी जो बेसिक है वो उसमें आ जाता है. हम बात करें सीधा ट्रांसेंडेंस, जो हमारे स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यूज है. हम सोचते हैं हमें बूढ़े होकर ये सब करना है, गीता हमें बाद में जाके पढ़नी है, बट हमारे यहाँ से हम बचपन से अगर ये वैल्यूज करेंगे. जैसे रिसेंटली आई सेंट माय सन टू वेदांता कैंप, व्हिच इज there's a beautiful ashram in Lonavala near Pune by Swami Parthasarathy. So that is a camp to not teach religion, but this is beyond religion. It is to teach SQ, values, and to teach, like the first question they asked over there to children is that what do you need the most for happiness? हैप्पीनेस क्या है, क्यों, क्या चाहिए हैप्पीनेस के लिए, तो यूनानिमसली सबने बोला मनी, यू शुड हैव लॉट्स ऑफ मनी, एवरीबडी इन द जेनजी थिंग, टीनेजर्स का कैंप था। देन वहां से शुरू किया कि मनी का खुद का रोल है, बट मनी इज नॉट द बी इट एंड ऑल, उसके अलावा क्या वैल्यूज हैं। सो ये एसक्यू है, नथिंग टू डू विद रिलीजन।
Okay.
Yeah.
Ifat,
If
what
I,
is your take on? Yeah, what is your take on
okay,
this
I mean,
entire?
you're touching a topic that I can go another for 2 hours, I guess.
It's fine. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
dig deep.
I mean, it deeply calls me. So I've done some deep dive work in 35 years to, come to a conclusion of being able to create the program called Living the Truth program. In that program, we essentially look at exactly what we are talking about here. And I resonate with some of the things that Anubhav was talking about, where if you look for SQ, which is your spiritual quotient, and you're looking for EQ, which is your emotional quotient, and then the IQ. And why do we not have a PQ, for example, which
Yeah.
is what Raghav was talking about? That's because if you have this three, you're automatically being able to take care of your people.
Yeah.
It's simple. That's the result of it. You're not working backwards from it. The reason why we feel that today we are having to pay attention to the physical quotient of it and take care of our bodies is because we have lost the SQ. We have lost the understanding of our primal. We have moved away from it because we abandoned things, right? We have abandoned the inherent understanding of integrity, which in other words is God, right? So we think that we have a battle over it, and we feel like while we understand that the spiritual qualities are primarily universal, so is also the religion, because it's only one,
Yeah.
which is the truth. The truth can't change for anybody, right? The truth remains the same. And that is, so today you will talk about it. So people say, okay, spirituality, let's do spirituality. And then they say they're starting to talk about a concept which has become very prominent today. It's called the boundaries, the boundary work. Isn't that true, Anuba? We talk about the boundary work. What is the boundary work? Of recognizing how do I bring myself to the middle path, because everything has its own boundary of a healthy parameters, like your blood report. You look at your blood report, you're going to see hemoglobin, you're going to see calcium, iron, all of these. Everything will always show you a range. There is nothing absolute, but it's going to be a range, right? And that range, if it goes below that range, is unhealthy. If it goes over the range, it's unhealthy. Similarly, like she was talking about, whether it's love, compassion, kindness, everything will have its boundaries. How much compassion are you going to show to somebody? Versus then recognizing, oh, suddenly they realized, oh, all this while in India, we were only bothered about others. What about myself? You see? So, what does it mean? It means that it's going to help you then understand that it is going to be a realization that you will need to know that when we understand spirituality, we always need to learn to balance that spirituality towards ourselves and to others, which is what religion decides how it is going to be done. When we can look at different systems, so you have ingredients to make a recipe, for example, right? You will be given the same best organic produce, and then Anuba is given the same sort of beautiful, wonderful apples and all of that in her table. But then you have all of these ingredients in front of you, but how do you prepare a meal without a recipe? Whether you have a recipe written in front of you or not, you're still going to devise a recipe for you to produce something out of it. And that recipe is religion. Something that puts together how much ingredient goes in how much form. So tadka kab lagega? You can't put a tadka, let's say, in the middle of cooking. You can't do that. And you can ask anybody, like, what will happen? Just tell me what's going to happen. It's not going to be the way it is supposed to be. Basically, the inherent quality of that recipe is not going to come out. And you're not going to hit that divine flavor unless you do it in the right way. And which is why traditionally we pass it on. There's a lived experience. the lived experience of me making biryani is not going to be same as what Anubha will learn from me. Because I have lived through it and I've seen how my mother would put it. There's no measurement to it, but I have been transferred that knowledge into my body, so I know exactly what goes into it. That's religion. Religion is a system that decides what's the boundary of how much, which is what, again, you seep into what she was talking about, the Buddhism, right? About what? Coming to the middle path. How do you come to the middle path if you don't understand the midline? In the human body, the spine is the midline. So the body orients towards the midline. And so the spine becomes the anchor in your life. For the body, for the physical body, the spine is the midline. And the midline then decides the right and left orientation towards it. And how far can we get? Beyond that, it's a flood. Even a river which meanders so beautifully in the landscape of the earth, which looks like it's free and it has no boundaries, it still has its natural boundary. If it crosses that boundary, it's a flood. It's not normal. You see? So if we think that we have a battle about this religion, I think what we need to recognize is that universal understanding of religion is only one. It is the mark of truth. How it is seen, how we have colored it, that's a different debate. Why it is done? Because there's confusion. And in confusion lies the benefit of the humanity. You see? How do I make money without creating confusion?
Yeah.
You see? So that's a different debate. But so let us not get blurry with that understanding and leave out the understanding of the anchor, because if you don't have the anchor, you're really going to move away from somewhere. So otherwise, it's only relativity, you see? So you will only live in two-dimensional world if you don't understand the third dimension. That's the truth. It's not what Raghav is saying. It's not what Yasmin is saying or Ifat is saying. What will be true is the truth, whether you like it or I like it or not. So that truth is what we are talking about as one that defines, the religion defines that boundary of how the spirituality will work. Otherwise, I'll tell you examples of it. I'm sorry, I just wanted to complete that. We have family units and how it has repercussion to children, because that's our topic of what we are talking here. So we have this young mother who has a young child and loving a partner, and then suddenly in his schema of life, he finds another partner which is outside marriage. And he says that's spirituality. He says, I'm connected to this person in spirituality, and you shouldn't be having any issues with that. So while we think that spirituality can be boundaryless, you really have to question your thoughts, because then it's going to hit the reality. And the reality is then what happens to the family unit, and then what happens to the child who's there. And then beautifully, this mother, I can see that while she believed in the same concepts as her partner, both of them believe in the same philosophy, and they believe that it should be a boundaryless spirituality, and they move towards it. Suddenly, she is hit by a reality to think that while I can accept what my partner is asking for, what's going to happen to my child?
Yeah.
And that brings her to the reality. And she says, no. I need to do what I have to do, which I'm primed to do, which is protect my child and the life of my child. Amazing transformation, Raga. Just an experience that's heart-aching. At the same time, she brings herself to the truth. So her situation throws herself into reality. And then she says, no, this is not what I thought it is. And I've understood that these are DIY approaches of life. What we make is DIY approaches. What we need to return to what is inherently there. Inherently, there is going to be a system. Whether you make a system or not, there is a system that's there. It might be a dysfunctional system, but there is a system. That's inherent. And religion is a system. That's all it is. And without a system, can you do anything? Can you and me talk here without the Zoom system running here? You can't. There has to be a boundary within which we are having the conversation, right? And you decided to have a certain set of questions and you have shared it with us. We have done some homework. All of that is a system. And without system, there is only chaos. And mothers really need to understand this, because if they don't understand the truth, they cannot hand the truth, which is their primary,
Absolutely.
that's their primary role of handing over that and giving that realization for their children that that's the truth that you are here to serve.
Yeah, what can you teach when you even don't know the theory of? जो
Exactly.
आपके पास नहीं है वो आप कैसे बांटोगे?
Exactly.
If you want your son to be a great athlete, look at yourself. Do you know
Yeah.
how to run? Simple. आप में वो नहीं है, आप उसमें कैसे बांटोगे वो चीज? So I think parenting is also about teaching and upgrading yourself. But if इसमें system में एक चीज मैं जरूर ऐड करना चाहूंगा, हम religion के system, and just my personal opinion, we don't have to go deep into it, but मेरे को ऐसा लगता है systems, be it any system, needs to be evolved. जूम के भी आज कम से कम वर्जन 2000 चल रहा होगा, वर्जन 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, 6.0. What is not required, you eliminate that.
Yeah.
And if reforms are not there, if evolution is not there, मतलब I know in you know there will come a time, I believe there will come a time wherein a text like Gita would need to be evolved. Would need to be more things would need to be added, because I think that is the beauty of these things. They were never meant to be the final verdict. There is this one last thing I want to delve deep into. Ifat, I'll start with you because ये आपके मैंने चैप्टर पढ़ा था और मुझे बहुत profound लगी थी ये चीज. So I took a note and I'm gonna read it. It all boils down to one simple truth. If the mother has not healed or is carrying wounds from her life with her, she may pass on those wounds to her baby and the progeny after that. It's a continuum. The only way to heal the world is to heal the womb. Found this is like a philosophy. मैं समझ में आ भी गया था, बट मैं इसके और प्रैक्टिकली समझना चाहता था. तो इफत, आई वांट टू स्टार्ट कि what do you mean by to heal the world? You need to heal the womb. We can start with the theory, we can start with the philosophy, then we can end with the practicality.
Yeah, while you read that, it makes me go deep within myself as you touch that, and that really comes that statement that came really from my deep understanding and deep pondering about it, and which is why again the program which Anubha was talking about, it's a 2-year program, so it's not a small program. It's a program of deep dive, going deep inside it, and that's what it touches upon, Raghav, what you're talking about. So, like we mentioned, that everything needs to begin, like you started the whole program by talking about it, that there is this universal womb through which everything then emanates, right? So if that's going to pass on what we are passing on, and which inevitably we will pass on, whatever experiences we have in life, we are going to pass that on, because the babies are born out of our bodies, so it is going to be an imprint of it. So their blueprint is going to be taken from us, and there's going to be some refinement that will happen through that process and then passes on that. While it can seem like it is also limiting and containing, it is also liberating and empowering in the same breath, if I can say that. Why in the same breath is the choices we make, the choices that I make. In our culture, especially, we talk about rebirth and those things, especially in Indian culture, right? We talk about, if they have done something in the previous births and then this transgenerational kind of trauma that is being passed on. That's exactly what we're talking about, being moved on. So you become the sum of what your mother and grandparents were, and then I will pass that on to my child. But when I pass that on, I also have the ability to make the choice of what I do in my life. So that means it's not necessary that while it is natural for things to be passed on as a continuum, I have the capacity to influence in a different way when I have been given the choice of empowerment today in my life. And I think every mother and every father does that. No matter how far they are in their life of choices that they make during pregnancy, for example, a lot of young women smoke and have alcohol. It's become very common. You can see that. That's a practical understanding of it, Raghav. So one is the theory, the practical aspect. So when the are so openly taking drugs and exposing their bodies to all kinds of alcohol and chemicals and all the things that way, as soon as they realize that they are pregnant, they start to retreat. And this is true. There are very few who will be left out making the same choices they do. But most women return to doing what they need to do. They are called primarily to start to protect what is inside their womb. They start to eat healthier. They will start to rebond with the community. They will start to say, what can I do better? What can I do better? Just this morning, I had a woman who is trying for pregnancy. The couple is trying for a pregnancy. They're not able to naturally have the baby. So they're deciding to go for, the husband says, I think it's enough that we have tried. Let's go for, IVF, and you be ready for it and everything will be okay. And she just tears up and she says that, while I'm okay with it, because that seems like my last option to do that, is there something I can do, ma'am, that can help me rebuild my body and to prepare my soul and my body for this baby to be received in whichever way I'm going to receive it? Is it even possible for me to do? So there is this inherent need for us to return back to our roots, back to our primal, so that we can refresh that in whatever way we can. And everybody does that. Even a father who is abusive, doing all of the things that he does, he tries his best to contain himself to be a better father to the child. They do. They may not turn out to be the best. That's a different matter. How much they can do, what are their limitations, that's a different matter to debate on. But inherently, you have the intention to be the best, to be improving, to be a better human being. You want to do, and suddenly you can see a lot of men who are not very responsive of making sure that they keep their family together and all of that. Suddenly, when they have the children, they ground themselves. You see them, I need a job now. I need to be steady. I need to make sure I provide for my son. They do that, the children, whether it's a boy or girl, doesn't matter. But the point is, I need to provide. And that grounds them. So it is very primal. So in that sense, what I'm saying is, whatever that you see in this world today of social evils that you see today, whether it's alcohol abuse or whether it is drugs all across the world, or sexual abuse that's happening today, or identity issues, gender identity issues that you see today, all of them come back, and crime, all of the major ones that we are talking about, or wars, any of that you see, it will return back to the womb. What have I experienced at that point? We have examples of research that talks about, which is basically, societal studies that they have been done, which elucidates and tells that anciently what they used to do is, if you wanted the child to go into the army or become the soldier to save the country or the kingdom, or to, annex another kingdom for that matter, they used to take away their babies from their mothers. Because only when you do that is when you are reframing that mind for that person to grow up to be able to kill another person. They knew it. They know it. That means we are inherently aware of this reality. And we do things in our life and make the choices socially or otherwise to ensure that that connection is broken. Because then we can profit out of that in different ways. Right? We have done that in a way where we have moved the mothers away from primal caregiving for the first few years of life for the child and drawn her into this corporate world of the fights and the race that we have to reach the power structures that we have. That's not fulfilling for women. Honestly, you ask the women, they will tell you about it. They want to be the mother and then achieve what they want to do. They don't want to think that they have achieved that and failed as a mother. While that has happened for many people, they are not okay with it. They carry that guilt inside of them. And guilt is a phenomenal emotion. We often say don't make them guilty, but it's inherently there. You really can't give somebody something. It's already inside of us. And it's a transformational energy of guilt that helps us say, you know, you got to change your path. You got to change your path. How many women have given up their careers because their children have got ADHD, autism, children not being able to have focus on things and say, I quit. I want to go back. And they quit and they come back and they start looking after their children. Within a short period of 3 months, there's a transformation that happens in the family simply because of her presence. So you can't really deny the truth. The truth is that this is how it is supposed to be structured. But what we are actually fighting is a social constructs, false social construct that we have. It has nothing to do with by being biologically being a woman. Own that femininity and own who I am versus what I want to be seen as. That's why I said that if we want to heal what is happening in the world today, we really need to refocus back on that womb, both bodily, spiritually, and psychologically and emotionally.
What do you mean? So when you say we focus on the womb, practically, how do you focus and how do you?
Practically, we go back to looking after the women and give them the space that they deserve to have, because the movement of feminism started simply because they wanted to find their dignity and respect. It was not about roles. It wasn't about the roles that we think we have fought for.
And what's the role of men over here? What
Role
can
of the
we do?
men, exactly, the honoring, like you were talking about. If I honor this and understand this, because the men are going to come out of the women anyways. They're not going to come out of the men. So there is no structure like that. The structure is the single woman, her womb is going to then produce the boy or the girl. So if that's going to happen, the men are the ones who can protect and create that structure that can support her emotional being during the time that she requires. Because you know, biologically and psychologically, we are different beings and entities. We are different. We have something common, but we are different. And that difference is what? There is no way that I can overpower a man's physicality. That's impossible. I can't do that. I need another man to do that. Or either I recreate it in imaginary and say, okay, you know what? If I find myself in front of 10 men, I'm going to think, what am I going to do? Oh, I'm a married woman. I will say either I'm a married woman, or I will say I have a boyfriend, or someone's going to come and see me, or find some stranger man, like it happens in Indian movies, that you'll find a man there and go stand next to him and behave like that's my own. So we have to understand the reality. We don't give up that reality. So therefore, the man creates that. So that's why in the Quran, beautifully in the Quran, the man's role is defined as the Qawamun, which means that he is the protector and the chieftain, which means that he leads his pack with protection. That doesn't mean that they dominate. So as a captain of cricket team, it doesn't need to be the best player. But as a captain, you need to look after your game as well as the players who are the best players in your team. So the player is your wife or your partner and the mother of your children. So she has the intelligence and the fluidity to move towards, because she's emotionally centered. She's centered around emotion. She's not centered around intellect, right? So like she said, the intellect takes care of the emotion and then protects the spirituality internally. Like she beautifully mentions that. It's exactly like that. So it's meant to be that the man becomes the intellectual framework within which you have the beautiful fluidity of the emotions, which is the representation of a woman, while she nurtures her progeny so that we are able to give a healthy society. That's what it's meant to be. So we deconstruct this by understanding that what we know as patriarchy is false patriarchy. That doesn't mean patriarchy is wrong or matriarchy is wrong. No, that's a system. That's all. It's a different kind of system. Some societies have matriarchy. Some societies have patriarchy. You're going to have either or. Which other version are you going to have? You're not going to have that. What it means is that we need to demarcate and understand between the false patriarchy and true patriarchy. And it's one of the most beautiful systems in the world, the patriarchy, where the father leads the pack and looks after what is within. And that's what the lion does, for example. He does nothing else. He just sits there. He doesn't do hunting, but he makes sure that he demarcates his area of where the hunting is going to happen, where the hunting happens by the lioness. It's beautiful representation of that. You can see that. What he does is he goes around putting his urine everywhere so that he
Yeah,
can kind
this
of,
is
you know,
my
demarcate
territory, marking his
my
territory.
domain and my territory. And that's what a man does. And then you said it so beautifully when you said that when I see my son fall down, I don't tell him, I don't run and then pick him up. That's not because you lack emotions, Raghav. That's not true. It is true that as a man, you're teaching him the worldly ways. You can handle this. I'm right
Because,
here.
yeah, because I think sometimes you have gone beyond that emotion.
Yes.
You are able to understand that emotion, process it quickly, and move on with
Yes.
what is required.
Yes.
That
And
emotion
that's what
doesn't
a
keep
man
you
brings.
stuck. Yes.
It's exactly what a man is supposed to bring in, a balance of understanding how much is what is required, because
Absolutely.
emotions are supposed to inform, not take over.
Yeah, not take over, because if they
Not
do
take
take
over.
over, your decisions and whatever follows would be
Exactly.
not aligned.
Exactly. And as a woman, I am going to go all over because I am all emotions. You see, that's what I'm meant to be. So you are going to contain me. But so imagine if I'm going to be the structure for you in my pregnancy of women, all kinds of hormones are happening in the body. So your emotions are all over the place. Who is going to keep the container? The man does that. So, I think it's very important for us to see the beauty of that natural design of the system and to live by that system rather than twist it to our own benefits and then say that, oh, okay, because this doesn't work, it's scandalized, and then we throw it and abandon that system. So, why don't we make the system better? Why don't we make the system better and make it work? I had a client who calls up, and he's a man, and he says that, I don't believe in marriage and I don't believe in monogamous partnership. And then so and so forth in his life, he fell in love with a woman, and he believes that I want to commit to this woman and she commits to me. And then while he's away doing his study or trying to find a job or something, in the few years that he was away from her and it was a distant relationship, she finds another man. Now he's like shocked. He says, so I said, why are you shocked? You don't even believe in marriage, first of all. Why are you so shocked that she moved on with finding another partner? So do you realize that the philosophies that you make out of your own self is not going to stand? They don't have legs. What is going to remain is what is not in your capacity to create, which is why it's divine. So we can't try and have a clash with the divine. That's not going to happen. That's the truth, and this is what it is about. And if I realize it and I align to it, then I have a beautiful way of structuring my society, structuring my family for the betterment of the children, because the children are the most vulnerable of the entire unit of the society.
Makes
And
sense.
responsibility is on us, not on the children. And that's why I think it's very crucial for us to know that if we want to heal the world, we got to heal the womb.
Yeah. And men have obviously equal role that they have to play.
Equal. They have a more important
More
role.
important role to play.
They
And they
have
need
a-
to understand that. Yeah.
And sadly, the abuse that we see, especially sexual abuse, is very, very rampant amongst men, right? The men are the most perpetuators of sexual abuse in comparison with anybody else. And sadly, we see it as a crime. But if you see it from the perspective of a therapeutic lens, we have to see how wounded men are in their growing up years, that they will have to violently reclaim that connection that they have lost primary in their life. So what they're trying to do is basically violently trying to reconnect and say, no, this connection belongs to me and I need it. So it's a convoluted worldview to look at, but essentially that's a deep wound that exists.
Yeah.
And if we want to heal sexual abuse in the world, rather than criminalize men, we need to heal them. They need healing lot more than women require. Because you know why? Women are very naturally prone to healing. They get chances every month as their bodies renew.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
see, they
beautiful.
will anyways renew themselves. And we know how to renew. If I feel something, I will go to Anubha and hug her. But men don't do that.
Yeah.
So that means they need that protection and care. And that's why you can see that anthropological studies will show you that baby boys will breastfeed for longer than baby girls. And that's also understandable. And the Quran beautifully again quotes that beautifully and says the weaning period for your babies is 2 years. We discovered this 2 years now, but it's already there. That tells you that the weaning period of your baby is this many months. And the baby boys are the ones that take the longest time to, to wean from their mothers. And if we kind of sever that connection much early by either formula feeding or other kinds of things that are happening at birth and after, the violence that happens at birth and after is unbelievable. Ra. The dignity of birth and dignity of death is another topic that I go deep dive into because we have lost the dignity of both the ends of life. And then the men are the ones who are the most wounded in this world, and they require the protection, the love, and the empathy for them to return back to where I am. Because most men who are, if you look at the survey and say who are the people who are, high up on alcohol, it's men. Drugs, men. Crime, men. Sexuality, men. So you say, oh, men are like this only. No, they are not. That shows back to the women because we are responsible for what has become in the world outside of us. So it is very primarily important for women to recognize their authenticity and their place of reclaiming who they are meant to be. And remember that that's what we need to concentrate on. What are our primal years that we need to give our children? If we can manage to do that, I mean, I'm telling you, we have a lot of healing that can happen. And I believe that women who are listening to us in this podcast will have the pointers to kind of think about and reflect because I have reflected upon it a lot. And I realized there are a lot of things that I could have done differently. Right? So it helps you to understand that.
No, beautifully said. Absolutely beautiful. One another thing, Anubha, if there is one thing that you would want people who grab a hold of this book and read, what is that one takeaway that you want? What is that you want really to happen when somebody picks up the book, they read it? What do you want them to take away with? What is that one learning that you really want that it should stick? So let's talk about the takeaway now.
Uh, I think each chapter has so much, right? Like just hearing Ifat, she could have written a chapter on what she just
Absolutely. Absolutely.
like there were so many things going on in my head about Gabor Mate's work on compassionate healing towards addiction, right, towards men, and looking at addicts as not criminals but people who need healing. I think what was really important for me was self-compassion. If that's one thing that mothers and women can feel towards themselves and not idealize themselves but forgive themselves and understand that motherhood doesn't come with a right and wrong manual, right, but really be compassionate towards themselves. So self-compassion is something that defines my chapter at least. I had to really, really be self-compassionate, really forgive myself for helicoptering, for doing all the things like Effort said, right? If I could go back and redo this whole thing, it would have a very, very different lens. But I'm not going to do any of that. But I'm going to have self-compassion that I was a good enough mother in Winnicott's words, right? I did my best and I'm going to be compassionate to myself. And I hope all mothers who pick this up can breathe a sigh and be like, okay, we are human, we are doing it, we are fine. Whatever we are doing, right, wrong, nothing, we are fine. Yeah. So self compassion.
Beautiful. Ifat, any last words that you would like to say? For Anubha, it was self-compassion. What do you think is that you would want people to take away from reading the book? Both men and women. Both men and women.
I think so. I think I think the recognition of the relational field is very important. I feel that's where we start from. And if I can go back to the root, which I was again talking about in the chapter itself, is the understanding about the ultimate truth being the foundational cell of our understanding of life. And it is a game changing understanding of how I can view life and how I can project life. And the choices that I get out of that understanding and operating from that is going to open a different dimension of life, because it gives me an empowerment to always know that I can do only three things with the truth. One is either I can ignore the truth, or I can dismiss the truth, or I can simply accept the truth. Like she did today when she said that I can't go back to do what I have done, but simply accept the truth of what I am today. Whatever I have been, this was what the template the child required to carry on with their life. So we will always get a chance of choices that happens in life as adults, because a lot of people have, when you come into the healing aspect, right? A lot of people will struggle with, can I forgive my mother, or my mother? They call it the mother wound.
The wound.
Sadly, they call it the mother wound, and it sort of gives me goosebumps as I say that, because when people say that I have a mother wound, ma'am, and you know what, I want to do something about it. I feel like we have criminalized that understanding of just being human, So I want people to take away that deep understanding that there is an unchanging truth of anchor in our life. And we are deeply connected as women towards it. So we need to start recognizing and anchor ourselves there, so that we can reorient our family units and become the guiding force for the society to become more healthier and healed.
Beautiful. Extremely profound. Extremely profound. And I really wish that a lot of people pick up the book. It's a beautiful book. Again, if it could impact me as a man, that means you have done your job more than it was required. It was beautiful, very powerful, and extremely great. And I hope that I was able to do justice to this subject, and we were able to cover some deeper levels of,
I think you could do like part 2 and part 3 and part 4.
Yeah.
And so
I
on.
think it's required. Ifat and Anuba, thank you so much for giving so much time. This is one of the best recordings I have done so far, because the kind of insights that I got from both of you is so profound. My team's going to love it when they're going to hear it.
Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I wish it reaches a lot of people, and a lot of people get to know about you guys, your work, your book, and everything that is associated with your ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really want to say bow down to you. And thank you so much for
Thank you.
creating space for us. Thank you.